All right, guys. So the Senate has now voted to override President Trump's veto on the NDAA, aka the National Defense Authorization Act. Now, this is a big deal because voting on the NDAA was the last little bit of leverage that the Democrats had and some Republicans against Mitch McConnell in order to try to force him to put a standalone bill for $2,000 stimulus checks on the Senate floor. However, Bernie Sanders, who was talking a big game to McConnell in the Senate, talking about how he was going to try to filibuster, and Chuck Schumer, who was also talking a big game, ultimately they folded under pressure. As yesterday, they allowed the vote to commence, voting yes on a motion to proceed. And then today, on New Year's Day, ultimately voting overwhelmingly in favor of overriding President Trump's veto on the NDAA, basically getting it passed. And now, at this point, they have no more leverage, which goes to show, guys, in life, never trust a Democrat. They're weak, they're incompetent, and obviously, they're not great at getting things done, right? And now the official overturning of President Trump's veto of the NDAA represents the first time that Congress has overturned a presidential veto, and basically a direct message to the president from Mitch McConnell that Mitch McConnell thinks he's now running the party. But before we get in that, my name is Greg Foreman, and you're watching A Black Conservative Perspective. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share A Black Conservative Perspective, a.k.a. a leftist worst nightmare. You can also follow me on Twitter at GForemanBCP. Let's get it. All right, guys. So like I said in the intro, I do think that what just happened in the Senate and Mitch McConnell pushing for a vote to overturn the NDAA and ultimately getting what he wants essentially is him sending a message to President Trump that I am the leader of this party, at least in my opinion. And he is currently working behind the scenes to take back the reins of the Republican Party. That is what Mitch McConnell is trying to do. All right, guys, so let's take a look here. A couple of days ago, President Trump had came out and tweeted that the weak and tired Republican leadership will allow the bad defense bill to pass. At least President Trump was aware that this was going to happen. Say goodbye to vital Section 230 termination, your national monuments, fort names, and treasures inserted by Elizabeth Warren, Pocahontas, 5G, and our great soldiers being removed and brought home from foreign lands who do nothing for us, a disgraceful act of cowardice and total submission by weak people to big tech. Negotiate a better bill or get better leaders now. Senate should not approve NDAA until fixed. All right, so what President Trump is talking about here is that he tried to tie together the NDAA and Section 230. Basically, he wanted the repealing of Section 230 to be in there with the NDAA. Obviously, Mitch McConnell did not capitulate to those demands. Now, also what's in the NDAA is a provision to rename a lot of the military bases and forts that were named after Confederate leaders. So there's a provision in there to do that. President Trump also tried to put a provision in there to allow the president to have more authority over pulling troops out of foreign wars. Right, so President Trump has been a big proponent of trying to end the wars and bring the troops back home. However, time and time again, each time he's tried to do it, the high-ranking generals and the military-industrial complex has basically stopped him and basically made it very difficult to actually do so. Now, there was also speculation that the NDAA also included a provision to try to get rid of the Insurrection Act. Now, that was in an amendment back in June or July. However, that did not make it into the final version of the bill. So the president still has that option if he actually wants to use it, even though he said that he does not want to use that. So Mitch McConnell passing the NDAA is basically a direct message to the president that he doesn't really care what the president wants. All right, so let's take a look at who voted yes and no, just for transparency here. There were 81 yeses and 13 noes and 6 not voting. So noes, we have Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, Cory Booker voted no. Josh Hawley, who's, man, he's been on the right side of all these issues. Rand Paul, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, right? So no real surprises from the nodes, in my opinion. Now you have the not voting. You have Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. Interesting enough, not voting, and Lindsey Graham not voting as well. Now, the reason why they didn't vote, guys, is because really they didn't want to come out against the president, right? So if Loeffler and Perdue had voted yes on this, essentially that would be seen as being in direct opposition to the president at this point. So it was smart for them not to vote at all. That was a good political move by them. They're definitely politically savvy, if nothing else. Loeffler and Perdue, they're very politically savvy. So now that that's done, this, in my opinion, effectively kills any chance of getting the $2,000 stimulus checks, at least in this current session of Congress. It's something that will have to be brought up again in the next section under the new Congress that will come in a couple days. So at this point, guys, this is it. Mitch McConnell got what he wanted done. He did what he needed to do. He's going to go home, and they're going to try to focus on Georgia. That's what's going to happen. So moving forward, McConnell is not only facing some backlash in his own Senate, but he's also facing some backlash from the broader GOP, as well as state legislators are listening to the voters in their states, and they are trying to investigate the voting irregularities and the election integrity of their states. And it's one of the state legislators from Pennsylvania, which is a state that's been under a lot of scrutiny, right, from the president and a lot of others, has stepped forward and asked Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, who is the minority leader in the House, to dispute the Pennsylvania election results until an investigation is conducted into the numerous claims of fraud. Until this is completed, the hasty certified results can't be trusted. All right, so he submitted this document, this letter to them, and I'm just going to go ahead and read the first two parts here and then go from there. Dear Congressman McCarthy, there are increasing concerns that the 2020 presidential election should have not been certified in Pennsylvania, with mounting and overwhelming evidence depicting election irregularities and extensive potential fraud. The fraud must be investigated, not ignored. Sadly, despite evidence, our governor and secretary of state inexplicably refused to conduct any investigations. Our republic cannot long endure without free and fair elections where each person has one legal vote. However, allegations of fraudulent activity as well as violations of election law in 2020 have placed the nation's eyes upon Pennsylvania. Without a thorough investigation into these allegations, the certification of Pennsylvania's election results is suspect at best. There has nothing to do with overturning any election results, but rather ascertaining if the allegations of fraud corrupted the outcome of the vote. There are simply too many questions that remain unanswered to say that the results can be trusted, and therefore the certification is premature, and the results must be disputed until an investigation is completed. All right. So essentially what he's asking for, guys, is for Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy to object to approving the results of the Electoral College on January 6th. And he's saying that the reason for this is that he doesn't believe that his state of Pennsylvania, that their certification is trustworthy because there are too many questions. And in that same letter, he outlines all the details of the voting irregularities and the statistical anomalies and all the questions and evidence that they have to suggest that something may not have been right about the voting in Pennsylvania. Now, that's what he outlines in the letter. He sent this to Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, asking them to stand up on January 6th to, at the very, very least, question the results of the Pennsylvania election. So we will see if McConnell will respond to that. However, some other news has indicated that McConnell really probably is not going to be on board with this, as he tried to G-check Josh Hawley, who has come out as a senator and said that he's going to object to the vote, giving the GOP a senator and at least one representative. Now there's like hundreds of representatives apparently that's going to be objecting. That is needed in order to force a floor debate and vote in terms of accepting the Electoral College results. And Josh Hawley has pissed off a lot of GOP leaders with this announcement, as they were really trying to prevent this from happening by encouraging the senators not to object. Now, According to Axios, in an extraordinary conference called this morning with fellow Senate Republicans, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said his January 6th vote certifying Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 election will be, quote, the most consequential I have ever cast, according to a source on a call and two other sources brief on the private remarks. Now, what Mitch McConnell means is that it's going to be the most consequential because he knows that he's going to vote in favor of certifying Joe Biden. He knows that. And because of that, he knows that he's going to take so much heat from the base. He's going to be seen as a traitor, and it could possibly end his political career and possibly fracture the GOP in half. He is right about that. What's going to happen on January 6th may fracture the GOP, like literally in half, between those who stand behind the president and those who don't. Some people may argue we're already at that point. But January 6th will solidify that because this is the last opportunity for the GOP to stand up for the president in regards to this election. This is the last opportunity for them to do it. So if they don't do it on January 6th and they officially certify Joe Biden as president, or at least they don't try to fight, because you need the Democrats to get on board too. And everybody that didn't stand up for the president possibly could get primary. Their careers are in jeopardy. I mean, let's be real. So this is a big deal. The conference call came in the wake of Senator Josh Hawley defying Mitch McConnell's wishes and publicly declaring that he'll object to certifying the electoral votes in Pennsylvania and perhaps in other states as well. McConnell had previously urged senators not to force this vote, which he believed would put Republicans up for re-election in 2022 in a horrible position, forcing them to choose between defying the most popular politician in the party, Donald Trump, and undermining democracy. McConnell said on the call that the January 6th vote is a vote of conscience, these sources said. A source paraphrased McConnell as saying, I'm finishing 36 years in the Senate and I've cast a lot of big votes, including over war and impeachment. And in my view, just my view, McConnell said, this will be the most consequential I have ever cast. The context was McConnell saying we're being asked to overturn the results after a guy didn't get as many electoral votes and lost by 7 million popular votes, the source said. Sounds like Mitch McConnell talking big smack against President Trump. And behind the scenes, many Republican senators are furious at Hawley for forcing them to take what Trump is setting up as the ultimate loyalty test on January 6th. On the call, McConnell asked Hawley to explain what he planned to do on January 6th, said a source on the call. Then Indiana Senator Todd Young pressed Hawley on which states he planned to contest, and Pennsylvania Senator Pat Toomey defended the integrity of his state's elections. This is interesting because what Pat Toomey is saying is in direct opposition to his state's legislator in regards to the election integrity. Guys, again, that just goes further to let you guys know how divided the GOP is at this point. There was just one problem. They were met with solace. Hawley hadn't dialed into the conference call, a fact first reported by Politico. All right, so as you guys see there, Mitch McConnell and a bunch of high-ranking Senate Republicans tried to G-check Josh Hawley on a conference call, but Josh Hawley did not dial into the call. He basically said, I don't need to be there. Because the next day in the Senate, he released his letter and his explanation explaining why he's doing it and also doubling down on him objecting to the Electoral College certification. Okay? So Mitch McConnell is trying to send a direct message, right? Behind the scenes. He's trying to tell everybody that, listen, I am the leader of this party. I control this party. You do what I say. He is trying to distance himself from the president at this point. He's trying to distance the party from the president at this point. His plan was to lay low and continue to fly under the radar while ignoring the president's demands until Biden got into office. And then once Biden got into office, the GOP was going to go about business as usual. That is what Mitch McConnell's plan was. However, it has become apparent that his plan is not going to work, at least without a lot of fireworks and a lot of drama and controversy happening along the way. At this point, guys, the biggest question is, after January 6th, regardless of what happens, after January 6th, it's going to be interesting to see how people perceive the GOP after that, right? How divided will the GOP be? And 2 or 3 months from now, 4 months from now, if Biden takes office, will people just forget about this and move on? Will they just fall back in line behind McConnell and the establishment Republicans? Or will Trump still be the leader of the party, and will he still have influence over the policy making within the Republican Party? I think that's the biggest question at this point. And in my opinion, McConnell's indicated that he sees a GOP future without Trump. Because if he actually gave a damn about what Trump said, this NDAA thing would have been different. He would have made a serious effort to try to at least modify Section 230. He would have made a serious effort to try to pass $2,000 stimulus checks. He made a serious effort to investigate the election. McConnell has not made a serious effort on any one of those fronts. He's come out and said that he, supports Biden. And that's basically where McConnell's at this point. He wants to go about business as usual. But it remains to be seen whether or not he's going to get his wish. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.